Good morning. My name is Sherry Maxfield. I'm Director of the Ohio Department of Commerce. The division of the State Fire Marshal is a part of Commerce, which is why I'm up here in front of you this morning. Today we are going to talk about a new effort we are launching to address a critical need that is being faced by communities across the state of Ohio. I refer to the dwindling number of men and women who are signing up for the volunteer fire service. And this morning, to kick us off, I'd like to introduce Governor Mike DeWine.
Director, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Director's been quite busy. A little thing called marijuana rollout she's been working on. So great job. So I am very pleased to be here at the Ohio Fire Academy to discuss volunteer firemen and women of the state of Ohio. And I think everyone knows that this has been a challenge in the last few years. Appreciate very much everyone being here. I want to acknowledge Representative Miller, Senator Schaefer, and other members of the legislature who continue to work on this problem and help us. Why are we talking about volunteer firefighters today? Well, according to the National Volunteer Fire Council, if you look at the national numbers, some 65% of all U.S. firefighters are volunteers. 64% of the nearly 30,000 fire departments in the U.S. are all volunteer. In 2020, the number of volunteer firefighters in the U.S. reached a significant low. This presents a challenge in itself, but when you consider that call volume of those in need of fire services, or EMS, has more than tripled in the last 35 years. Just think about that, more than tripled in the last 35 years. And of course, the great bulk of that is not for actual fires. The great bulk of that is for medical assistance and help, which we look generally to our fire departments to do across this country and across the state of Ohio. We are not immune in Ohio from this shortage of volunteer firefighters. We're experiencing the same thing as every other state is. Approximately 70% in Ohio of our fire departments are volunteer. The number of volunteer firefighters in the state is decreasing, while the number of calls these Ohio departments receive is increasing, and increasing significantly. In 2022, I created the Volunteer Fire Service Task Force to look at this very problem and to look at the needs Ohio's volunteer fire service has and what we can do to help. That task force, and we have some of the members here today of that task force released its report in February of 2023. In it were a number of important recommendations to help improve volunteer fire service throughout the state. Fire Marshal Reardon will, in a few moments, share more about the progress the state fire marshal has made in accomplishing some of these recommended steps. So he will be giving a report on that momentarily. But I do want to highlight one essential step we're taking and we're announcing today to turn the tide and restore the number of individuals volunteering to fight fires across the state of Ohio. Beginning today, public service announcements, PSAs, will begin to air across the state, encouraging everyday Ohioans to become extraordinary heroes by serving their communities as volunteer firefighters. We'll view these PSAs in just a minute when Fire Marshal Reardon speaks. We believe that there are many individuals within the state of Ohio who are really unaware that of this significant need for volunteer firefighters. And many of them do not realize that they have the ability to volunteer. Today, that lack of awareness, we hope, will begin to change. as these PSAs and advertisements begin to appear on TV screens, computer screens, and mobile devices across our state. Right now, there are approximately 400 that we know of, probably more than that, but 400 open positions with volunteer fire services across the state. I know very few fire departments that are not, volunteer fire departments that are not looking for more people. It's significant, I want to point this out. These positions are not all for citizens who want to fight fires. There's other positions in there where they can be of great help. Departments throughout the state need volunteers to write grants, volunteers to serve in procurement, volunteers who conduct other administrative work. So to keep a fire department going, there's just a lot of different tasks. Doesn't mean you have to respond and go out there and fight the fires or provide the medical care. There's other roles that will be very, very valuable for your local fire department. If you have these skills and you have some time to volunteer, I strongly urge you to do that. I want to recognize 4 members of the latest volunteer firefighter class. There's 23 total members who are participating, who are beginning their training here at the Fire Academy this weekend. Let's give them a hand. So we appreciate their willingness to come out early for today's event so that we could acknowledge their participation. Again, our thanks goes out to those across the state who volunteer, as well as those who will make the decision to serve our communities and neighbors by volunteering in the future. Now let me turn this program over to our State Fire Marshal, Kevin Reardon. Kevin?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Governor DeWine, Director Maxfield, and members and supporters of Ohio's Fire Service, welcome. I want to thank you for being here today as we mark the beginning of a key initiative to help bolster the number of volunteer firefighters serving in the state of Ohio. Before I go any further, I'd like to ask you all a question. What would happen if there was a fire in your home, your business, or somewhere in your community? What would happen if no one responded? Think about that. Now, that's completely hypothetical, but sadly, that possibility is becoming more real by the day. A moment ago, the governor shared some startling national figures and statewide statistics regarding the volunteer fire service. These statistics deserve our full attention, and that's why we're here today. The problem, the volunteer fire service is declining. The number of volunteer firefighters is getting smaller and smaller, while the need is increasing. As you'll hear shortly from some of Ohio's volunteer fire chiefs who are here with us today, this is an unsustainable trend that must be reversed to help save the lives and protect the safety of all Ohioans. A moment ago, the governor mentioned the report released last year by the Volunteer Fire Service Task Force that examined the needs of the volunteer fire service in Ohio. This group was spearheaded by the Ohio Department of Commerce, and I had the privilege of serving as chair, where I worked alongside many local officials and elected officials, as well as firefighters from across the state. I'm pleased to share with you that we have made some progress toward fulfilling some of the recommendations that were included in that report. For example, earlier this year, the Division of State Fire Marshal hired a full-time volunteer coordinator to engage our volunteers throughout the state and offer them the ability to provide resources and be there and provide support for them in any way possible so that they can do their jobs in Ohio's communities much better. In addition, the Ohio Fire Academy has waived 100% of training fees for all volunteers. So if you're a volunteer firefighter in the state of Ohio, your training here at the Ohio Fire Academy is free. Free, free, free. That's a big deal for volunteers. We should not expect our volunteers to foot the bill when they've already raised their hand to give of their time. I'm thrilled that is no longer the case. In addition, the division has increased the financial support it provides to departments through our grants programs so that they can acquire tools and equipment that they need to keep Ohioans safe. The launch of the PSA campaign is yet another step in addressing the need for volunteer firefighters in Ohio. The message of these PSAs is simple yet important. Now is the time for Ohioans to step up and become the hometown heroes that their communities need. These individuals don't need to have previous first responder experience. They only need to share a commitment and dedication to serving their neighbors and their communities. With that, I invite you to turn our attention to the monitor. We will be showing the PSAs here that will be starting to get aired today. For our friends in the media, we will make these available to you to download with the hopes that you will also share them with your viewers. So without further ado, my best Vanna.
The largest portion of fire departments are volunteers. I don't think there is any one thing that draws you to it. I just love helping people. I've always, been about spreading kindness, and I think as a job, is a lot of what the fire service is.
It's a very fulfilling job. It's very satisfying. You can really see directly how you're helping people.
You have that close eye to the actual community. I owe everything to being a volunteer. As a volunteer firefighter, you don't save people every day. You just come in and you make somebody's bad day better.
You really see the ways that you're helping people as you're doing it.
I actually volunteered my hours. You're coming in, get to drive the trucks, helping people. I love it.
Every day, I get to go hang out with some of my best friends and to make people's lives better.
You know somebody has to be there. And you want it to be you.
All right. These PSAs encourage Ohioans to visit makemeafirefighter.org. Once there, they can type in their zip code to see what current volunteer positions are available in their community. They can also act right then and there to express interest in that role. As the governor pointed out, the need for volunteers is vast, but we know that Ohioans can rise to this occasion. Though we've made progress towards supporting the volunteer community, more work needs to be done. That's why we need legislative action and support to make additional gains in this critical area to help save Ohio's communities and protect them. With that, I'd like to thank Governor DeWine for recognizing the significance of this very real need and also for his support in this very important initiative. I also want to thank Director of Commerce, Sherry Maxfield, for her support in this work as well, and the work of many others who have helped get us to this point today. More than anything, I want to echo what the governor said regarding and thank the men and women across Ohio who have made the decision to step up and become volunteers. And all those who are currently volunteers, you are making significant differences in your community. You're keeping them safe, and that's a great thing we can do every day to save Ohioans, protect them. For some additional perspective on this important issue, I'd like to introduce John Finley, who is Chief of the Malta and McConnellsville Fire Department, who will be followed by Chief Chris Weissong, who is Chief of the Wayne Township Fire Department in Fayette County.
Good morning. My name is John W. Finley, and I am a volunteer fire chief of Malta and McConnellsville Volunteer Fire Department in McConnellsville, Ohio. For those of you that don't know, McConnellsville is a small rural community with roughly 2,000 residents. I've been a volunteer firefighter and EMT for 45 years. I'm also a second-generation volunteer, as my father served there for over 55 years. As you've heard this morning, in Ohio and all across the United States, there's a critical shortage of volunteer firefighters. Communities, both small and large, are in critical need of volunteers to serve. When someone calls 911, they should be able to expect a fast and professional response. It's what they deserve. But what would happen, as the Marshal stated earlier, if no one ever showed up? This will happen more and more if we can't correct this crisis soon. Critical services provided by fire and EMS services to our communities can't be left to chance. When someone calls 911, it is most likely the worst day of their life. Think about that. We owe it to our family, our friends, our neighbors to be there when they need us the most. I appreciate the forward thinking of Governor DeWine and Marshal Reardon and our political leaders in the quest to get ahead of this crisis. And yes, it is a crisis. To support all efforts to solve the volunteer fire and EMS service challenges. The small communities that the volunteer fire and EMS services serve, like mine especially, can't afford the taxes they pay now, let alone the cost that it would add to provide paid professional services to all these small communities. There's one way we are going to solve this problem. That's through Ohioans stepping up to become the leader we need them to be. That's why I ask and encourage all Ohioans to please explore how you can help this situation and consider becoming a volunteer yourself at a volunteer fire department and an EMS department near you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Chief Chris Weissong with Wayne Township in Fayette County. I do not have big, long papers, and I'm not a politician, so I don't speak as good as these folks do. But I have been in the fire service for over 22 years. I've been the chief for the last 11 years. And I can repeat everything that was said with accuracy. There has been a huge decline in the volunteer fire service. We've seen it. People are getting busy. This decline is also, I believe, worsened some by the lack of support from employers. So I'd like to add to the employers out there to support your volunteer firefighters in their communities. Allow them that time to be able to get that training. So as Chief here said, you know, when you call 911, you're getting that professionalism that you expect, all right? Allow them that time to get that training, allow that time to respond and help their community. So on top of that, you know, the decline across Ohio, across this nation, I have also seen worldwide. I've been working with a program in Serbia to help their volunteer fire program. So they've seen it, and I can see it around the world, and I know it's an issue, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that really want to help their neighbors. They just sometimes don't know how. And I'm very appreciative of the programs of MakeMeAFirefighter.org, and I do believe that is a great step for anyone to just be able to get online, put in some information, and see what's available around them. And then they'll get contacted by one of us that get that information. So I encourage you, if you have some sort of interest, get on that program, check it out, put in your information, and then help out. Thank you.
Thanks.
This time it gives me great pleasure to introduce State Senator Tim Schaefer, who's been a long friend of the fire service and continues to be very supportive of it. So,
thank you, Marshal Reardon, and I just want to say thanks to the Marshal and the Director and Governor Mike DeWine for their insight and their proactive stance at solving a problem before it gets bigger in Ohio. These men and women are volunteers. Anybody in the fire service, but especially the volunteers, they put themselves at risk for no reward other than the satisfaction that they're helping their communities. And as you advance in your volunteer career, we can't say thank you enough for the commitment you've made, for getting up in the middle of the night, leaving your employment in the middle of the day, whatever it might be, and answering the call from your citizens, your fellow citizens, your communities who are in desperate need of your help. That is a commitment and the promise that you're making to your communities that we all should respect very, very deeply. And Governor, I'm so proud to hear the news of the initiatives you're taking to make sure that the training is at no cost for these volunteers and that we have now a new PSA system going across the state of Ohio, the great state of Ohio, to make sure that our citizens know there are volunteers out there coming to our rescue, and we need more volunteers to step up, more great Ohioans to step up to this challenge and start a wonderful, wonderful career in their community. So thank you all for your commitment. Thank you so much, Governor, and we got your back. Representative Miller and I are going to support you, and the whole legislature, I know, is going to get behind these initiatives and others. So thank you so much, and God bless you all. Keep up the great work.
It's also my pleasure to introduce State Representative Kevin Miller, who is a long friend of public safety in general. He came from the law enforcement side, but that's okay. We'll take it. He's a good friend of ours and very helpful. So, Representative Miller, thank you.
Thank you, Marshal Reardon. And I knew the cop jokes were coming. I didn't think it would be that quick, but that's okay. That's okay. I too want to start out with thanking the governor and the administration for making this a top priority. As Marshall said, I come from a safety service background, and I can tell you most of the time as a state trooper, when I arrived at scenes, they weren't paid individuals. They were folks just like these that have stepped up to volunteer. And in my house district, the vast majority of those that protect us, our houses, our property, respond to car crashes, are volunteers. That's why it's so essential that we move forward with initiatives like this in order to try to bolster those ranks. And as my colleague, Senator Schaefer, said in the legislature, it's been a priority, at least for me and him and several of us, to continue to support these types of initiatives and moving forward to make sure our safety services, our first responders have the necessary resources to do what they need to do to keep us all safe, and just look forward to working with the administration moving forward to do whatever we can on the legislative side to make this program and many others a success.
Before we have a Q&A with Governor DeWine, our Ohio Fire Academy staff has a presentation to make to you, Governor, so please come forward.
Governor. All right, get a picture here, guys. These guys are pretty heavy. Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right, Kevin.
Okay. Thank you, Governor.
Happy to take any questions. Yeah, we have at Columbus's the mayor's request, we've deployed members of the Ohio National Guard. The great thing about the Guard is these are citizens. They have other jobs, most of them. We have some in the Guard who have an expertise in this area, and we have deployed them over the last several years to a number of cities around the state. And we will certainly continue to do that when requested by a local community. Who else?
The next
Here,
8-week
guys, stand up
period
here.
of time. They will run for the next 8 weeks in media markets throughout the state.
TV and radio, or just TV?
Just TV, I believe.
It's digital. I think it's digital
And
as
digital,
well.
yes.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Governor, how do you feel about the rollout for recreational marijuana sales?
Yeah, I'll let the director talk about that, but from my perspective, look, it's gone very well. This is not something we asked for. In fact, we were against it. But we follow the law, and we follow the will of the people of the state of Ohio. And so the director and her team, I think, have done a very, very good job. Director, you want to comment on that?
Thanks to the cooperation of our licensees, it was a smooth rollout, minimal problems, and the will of the citizenry was responded to, I thought, in a timely and professional manner, which is all that the governor asked me to make sure happened.
And frankly, a little sooner than we thought, faster than we initially predicted. So, anybody else? Oh.
Paid for volunteer firefighters, is there also any other benefits that will encourage them to participate in small communities?
This. Let me just talk about this in general, then Kevin can respond. But this is an ongoing effort. The announcement that we're making here today is one more thing we're doing. But we're going to have to continue to focus on this. We often talk about this as a fire problem, and it is a fire problem. But it's also, the fact is that 75 to 80% of the runs are not fire. These are people who are having a heart attack. These are people who can't breathe. These are people having some attack. And so, this is a life and death situation many, many, many times. And so we have to continue to focus on this. We have to also focus on response time. One of the things that we're going to be asking the legislature to really look at, and we're looking at, is how we better coordinate between the thousands of departments that we have in the state of Ohio, so that we can cut the time down, the response time down. So the announcement today is kind of a slice of the overall challenge that we face. But these are life and death matters. Kevin, as far as other benefits, besides the fact that you're helping your community, you're working with some great people in that local community to respond to, what might be the worst day of an individual's life or a family's life. Kevin, anything else?
Governor's right. This is not a one and done. This is a long-term effort. I don't see this effort going away anytime soon. Most people, it's hard to believe that for the longest time in Ohio, our most stable, largest group of volunteers in the fire service were farmers. Farmers were the perfect people. They were good with heavy equipment. They could leave the fields, go help their community, and come back and pick up where they left off. They could think fast on their feet. They were perfect. Well, those days are long gone. Many of those farmers and their families have moved on. They're either not in farming anymore or they're just not interested. So the community has to pick up that gap. And like the governor said earlier, you don't have to agree to pick up a fire hose to become a volunteer. We need people to do that, sure, but there's many other roles that you can do in your local volunteer fire department to help them out. So there's many things. The volunteer task force report that was issued has many suggestions in there, but the challenge now is to find those things that we can make realizable and make them happen with the help of the legislature. So this is by far not a one and done.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part. Today's what?
24-hour week hearing. There's a hearing for the 24-hour week for do you have any thoughts on this?
No. I mean, we knew this is where we would be. We're in court, and courts will make decisions. Who else? I don't have any comment on that today. I'll have to look at it. I've not really looked at it, but I will. Who else? Anybody?
One last one. Could you speak to, I think you talked about it in some ways, but could you speak to the biggest misconceptions Ohioans might have about what being a volunteer firefighter is?
Oh, okay. Being a volunteer firefighter in Ohio means you are willing to take 36 hours of training that is free here through the Ohio Fire Academy. You're willing to take and learn the skills necessary to take and help people on the worst days of their lives, whether it be a car accident, an illness, or a simple house fire, or something smaller. Volunteers are average citizens. They raise their hand, they say, we want to help, we want to serve. And from doing that, there's a lot of personal self-satisfaction, but I can guarantee you the community gets far more benefit from their service than what you can imagine. And they do it for nothing. Volunteer means exactly that. There's no pay involved with being a volunteer firefighter. In fact, it may cost you some of your own money to buy gear and some other things. But personal satisfaction, and a lot of volunteers also start their firefighting career as a volunteer. Even I was a volunteer for a minute in 1978. So a lot of people get into the career that way. But still, the majority of what we need are the people that John and Mary Citizen that just want to help their community. We need them to stand up and say, we want to help, we want to serve.
Okay. No, I mean, we don't have a goal other than to, try to slow this trend that we're seeing. So we don't have any specific goal as far as numbers, not as far as numbers. I mean, the real goal is to get people back interested and at least start thinking that this might be something that they would want to do, that they would want to volunteer. A lot of people have just never thought about it, never thought that, oh, this is something that I could spend some of my very precious time doing. And I think if more people thought about it, then some of those individuals who thought about it would be willing to do this and would come forward and will come forward. Thanks, everybody. That's Kevin.
Governor, we wanted to show you our tabletop over here.
Okay,
real
let's
quick
go look at
before
this.
you leave.
Yeah, let's go look at it.